up, everybody? Nate here, and today I want to answer one of the biggest and most controversial questions in the housing market right now. I've been seeing a lot of creators on YouTube and TikTok basically bashing landlords, saying that they're evil, saying that they've been hoarding housing, and saying that the whole world would be a much better place without them. So are landlords evil and destroying the housing market, or do we actually need them to better our economy? And I can already tell you this video is gonna make a lot of people mad, so strap in. The first thing I want to talk about when it comes to landlords is the idea of landlords are buying up a whole bunch of houses and they are hoarding them. The idea of landlords and real estate investors buying up a lot of houses and inventory in the United States dates all the way back to the last recession and great housing market crash of 2007. Back then we had this massive real estate crash where housing values essentially dropped by around 90%, and part of the reason for that is because big banks got really greedy with their mortgage policies and a lot of people ended up defaulting because of that. So there has been this big stigma against real estate investors and more particularly corporations buying up houses because of that. And I think there's this big fear with corporations buying up houses that the same exact thing is going to happen. It's going to be a bank and corporation related crash, but that is not what we're seeing today. It's true that corporations have been buying more houses over the last couple of years than they have in the past, but everybody over the last couple of years has bought more houses than they have in the past. Big government incentives like stimulus programs and mortgage moratorium meant that many more people were going to be able to get into houses, and those benefits also extended into real estate investors and corporations. But it's worth mentioning that corporations own less than 5% of all the homes in the United States. That number is expected to grow, but the amount of houses that are expected to hit the market and the amount of houses that are expected to be built are also going to grow in the future. Now, what about just individual real estate investors? These would be your massive landlords, and it's worth mentioning that they only own around 10 to 15% of all homes in the United States. So that leaves the other 80% of homes in the United States, and 65% of all homes are owned by individual owners. The rest of the homes in the United States are completely vacant, meaning that somebody doesn't really live there year round. The house needs to be fixed. It's owned by a landlord who isn't doing anything with it, or it's owned by an individual buyer who again isn't doing anything with it. So yes, there is a small portion of homes in the United States that are owned by corporations, and there is a small portion that is owned by individual investors, but the vast majority of homes in the United States are owned by individual homeowners. We're talking about families. The idea of hoarding housing doesn't really make any sense to me, because when I think of hoarding, it's just having something for the sake of having it. But real estate investors and corporations own a house to rent it out to somebody who needs housing. Real estate investors are not just sitting on millions of vacant properties and refusing to sell them to anybody because they can't really make any money that way. So it doesn't make any sense for them to do that. If a real estate investor wanted to make money from the property, they'd rent it out or they'd sell it. So there isn't as much hoarding going on as a lot of people believe. I mean, sure, are there vacant houses out there that are owned by landlords? Absolutely, but I wouldn't say this is the majority. Now, the second thing I want to go over is the idea of housing as a commodity. There is a large group of creators out there that believe that housing should not be a commodity, and what I mean by that is that it shouldn't be bought and sold for a profit. Now, I have some pretty big concerns with this just in general, because housing is most definitely a commodity in the United States. Even if you don't look at the idea of landlords and corporations making a profit off of rental units and making a profit off of just owning and flipping houses, regular everyday Americans make a profit off of their house more often than not. Now, I want to give a slight caveat here that if you are in the market to buy a home, you should never expect to make a profit out of it. You don't buy a house to make a profit. You buy a house in order to live in it and to make memories, and because that's what your family needs. But the fact of the matter is, every American wants to make money off of their house, so housing is a commodity. You can't say it's not a commodity for landlords and it's not a commodity for corporations and then turn around and make hundreds of thousands of dollars off of your home. So if you can make hundreds of thousands of dollars selling your home, then what is the difference between a landlord? We'll get into this a little bit more in a second, but landlords technically don't create anything. They don't build the house, but they're still profiting off of that. I would venture to say that most Americans don't build the house that they live in. I mean, I certainly fall into that category. I did not build the house that I currently live in, but I've been living here for several years now. In fact, I haven't even really done any massive renovations to this home, but if I end up selling it, I will most likely make a profit off of it. But the question is, should that be allowed at all? I don't think it's the best way for Americans to build their wealth, but buying a home is a great entry point for middle-class wealth in the United States. Many Americans have a lot of wealth in their house, and they should be able to make a profit off of that. Put on HGTV and put on one of those house searching shows, right? Every single real estate investor is going to talk about how your house is an investment, how you could potentially see so many gains from it by buying in this area or renovating it. Why do we talk in those terms if you're not going to make a profit on your house? Many Americans buy a home as an investment. Now again, I personally don't believe that a house is an investment because there is a lot of costs associated with a home, and you have things like inflation. There is just a lot to consider when we talk about an investment, and a house simply costs you money. But many Americans believe that a house is an investment and there is a potential profit that could be coming from it down the road just simply through home ownership. Again, you don't really need to contribute anything to your house in order to get those benefits. The same can be said for a landlord. So both parties should technically be able to benefit here. The other idea about housing as a commodity is everything is a commodity. Everything in this entire world is bought and sold in some way, shape, or form. I don't make the rules. That's just the way it is. I don't complain to my city government that they sent me a water bill. I just pay the water bill because they brought me the water, they serviced it, and that means I now have to pay for it. Same when it comes to food. You don't see grocery stores going through the same issues because grocery stores don't actually make anything. They simply just commodify food, water, and clothing. Should a grocery store also be villainized because it doesn't actually create anything? Well, that would be crazy because somebody has to sell something, somebody has to manage something, and somebody has to take care of it. That's where landlords come into play. So the idea of housing as a commodity is a bit of a stretch in my opinion. To go off of that point, there's this whole idea that landlords don't do anything. They don't create anything, and they simply just don't do anything when they own a home. And let's be honest, that is half right. Landlords don't create anything. Most of them are not building these houses. Most of them are not actually going into the homes and doing any of the work. A lot of landlords have property management companies that take care of all of that. But to say that landlords don't do anything is a bit of a stretch. Landlords do a lot of maintenance on homes, and they do a lot of the taxes and a lot of the paperwork that some people just don't want to deal with. The way that I see it, landlords provide a certain service to somebody who wants to rent a home. They're the ones that are going to take care of the house. So if something breaks within the house itself, well, you're not the one that's going to have to foot the bill in a lot of cases. The landlord is going to have some type of savings put aside to take care of that. And again, you can point out a million different landlords that have done this completely wrong and that do not take care of their house, but that is a problem with that particular landlord. That is not a problem with the landlord system itself. Landlords take care of the house, they take care of the apartment on your behalf, and many Americans just don't want to be bothered with that. The other idea here is, why exactly do we need landlords to buy houses at all? If we have vacant houses, why don't we just give those houses to people who really need them, people who don't own a home right now? Well, I think the biggest issue with this is not everybody wants to own a home. Not every house is available to actually live in. Not every house is livable in the United States. Some vacant houses need a lot of repairs. Some vacant houses are in areas that people wouldn't be able to afford or that people simply just don't want to live in. So we can't just throw random people into those houses and expect everything to go well. There needs to be some kind of system there for people to own these homes. And the fact of the matter is, if we have a bunch of vacant houses in the United States, how do we decide who gets them? How do we decide what a family of 4 gets versus a family of just 1 or 2? Is it fair at all that somebody has a bigger family, gets a bigger house and more things versus somebody who is just a single individual? I'm not really sure if we'd be able to find an equitable solution for vacant houses in the United States to make sure that everybody is appropriately taken care of. But now, with all of that being said, are landlords evil and do we need them? But you gotta think about the idea of having landlords in the first place. Well, first and foremost, not everybody in the United States wants to own a home, but everybody in the United States needs a place to live. There's people who travel a lot that buying a home just wouldn't make sense for them. There's people who don't want to take care of the day-to-day maintenance and take care of all of the expenses that come with owning a home. There's a lot of college students out there. There's a lot of people out there who are more focused on creating, learning than wanting to own a home. Home ownership is definitely not for everybody. I would have to agree with the fact that home ownership makes the most sense for, I would say, the majority of Americans all throughout the United States. But to say we shouldn't have landlords at all doesn't really make any sense. Somebody has to be owning those homes. And do we want that to be landlords in the private sector or in the government sector? The other question is, if we don't have any landlords or you don't have any rental at all, that leaves only owners owning homes, so how should people be able to afford homes? Houses are hundreds of thousands of dollars, meaning that most people are going to have to take out mortgages, meaning most people are going to get into more debt than they pretty much ever have in their life. Is that going to be a sustainable way to run our economy? And if you just say houses are completely free, well then how are we going to pay for them? Is there going to be some sort of government subsidy? Is the government going to own every single home? If so, how do we decide what's going to be in each home? Are they going to be exactly the same? Is there going to be some type of customization that we can do? I mean, how is this system going to work? And if you kind of create a hybrid system where some houses are free for some individuals and some people have to pay, well, is that an equitable system? I mean, is it free that somebody has to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a home and then other people get houses completely for free? In my mind, that could potentially be a solution, but you have to have the idea of commodification in the housing market in order to get there, because people who want to buy houses, well, that is now going to become a luxury. They're going to have the things that they want in a house, like a pool. It's going to be in the area that they want. People that can't afford a house, well, they might get a house for free, but it's not going to be a luxury apartment or a luxury house. They're basically just going to get whatever is available. I firmly believe that the vast majority of landlords are not evil. Are there some evil landlords out there? Absolutely. Are there landlords that completely abuse the system? Absolutely. Those are things that we need to solve. We need to have bigger and better reforms in the landlord and real estate investing industry. But like I said before, home ownership benefits a lot of people. The value that people get out of homes is a pathway towards middle class wealth. It is not the true key to wealth in the United States, but it does help millions of people and it gives people a place to live. If you get rid of landlords, if you completely change our housing system altogether, well, you take away that wealth building opportunity and you take away people's privacy and their ability to own something. If you get anything out of this entire video, real estate investing is one of the best ways to build your wealth. Now, I know that might sound jarring considering the entire topic of this video, but think for a second what wealth actually does for you. Wealth is money. Wealth allows you to make the changes that you want to see on the world. Wealth gives you the ability to make changes where you see fit. If you are a good person, then wealth is only going to amplify that. It is going to give you the tools to make positive changes and impact the world in a really awesome way. If you are a bad person, then more money is just going to amplify your bad actions. But it's not the money that is evil here. It is the person. The same can be said for landlords. There are good landlords out there that want to make positive and significant contributions to society, and there's landlords out there that are only in it to make money. But there is nothing stopping you from becoming a landlord and a real estate investor yourself and becoming a really good landlord, changing the market from the inside out. You can make that positive change and grow your wealth at the same time, and one of the only ways to do that is to become a landlord. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Do you think that all landlords are evil and that we should completely get rid of them, or are landlords needed in our housing market of today? That is it for me, everybody. Be kind out there, and I'll see you all in the next one.